Charlotte never liked shopping on Sundays. The supermarket was always crowded, the aisles filled with people in a hurry, and the noise gave her a headache. But that morning, her son Nolan and his wife Zoe asked her to come along. They said they needed groceries for the week, and since they all lived together, Charlotte agreed. She didn't know this trip would change everything. As they walked into the store, Zoe grabbed a big cart and started filling it almost immediately. She moved fast, picking expensive things: wine, cheese, steak, imported chocolates. Nolan followed her quietly, pushing the cart and smiling like everything was fine. Charlotte trailed behind, holding a small basket with just a few things she needed: some bread, milk, and tea. "Mom, do you want to get anything else?" Nolan asked without looking at her. Charlotte smiled softly. "No, dear. This is all I need." She didn't like to spend too much money anymore. Ever since her husband died, she had learned how to live simply. Even when times were hard, she always made sure Nolan had what he needed. She worked long hours to pay for his school and later helped him with his first apartment. She was proud of him. He had a good job now, a house and a wife. But lately, she noticed he wasn't the same. He talked less, sighed more, and seemed distant. As they reached the frozen section, Zoe tossed 2 boxes of ice cream into the cart and said, "Charlotte, you should try this brand. It's imported. So creamy." Charlotte smiled politely. "I'm sure it's nice, dear." She didn't add that 1 box cost more than what she usually spent on groceries in a whole week. An hour later, the cart was overflowing. Zoe checked her phone while Nolan pushed the cart toward the checkout lines. Charlotte followed slowly behind, feeling a small ache in her legs. She was tired but glad to be spending time with them. Or at least, she thought she was. They reached the counter. The cashier, a young woman named Jamie Park, greeted them with a polite smile. "Good afternoon," she said. "Did you find everything you needed?" Zoe nodded and began placing items on the belt. "Yes, thank you." Charlotte placed her small basket of bread, milk, and tea at the end. She didn't want to mix her things with theirs. It wasn't about money, it was about fairness. She always paid for her own things. Jamie started scanning the items. The total number kept climbing on the screen. 120, 280, 390. Charlotte's eyes widened. By the time Jamie finished, the total was $487.60. Then Zoe turned to her and said sweetly, "Go ahead, Mom. You can use your card." Charlotte blinked. "My card?" Zoe laughed lightly. "Yes. We didn't bring our main card. You can pay this time. We'll pay you back later." Charlotte looked at Nolan, expecting him to say something, to at least step in, but he didn't. He just looked away, embarrassed. She spoke softly. "I didn't agree to pay for all this. I only came for my few things." Zoe's smile vanished. "Oh, come on, Charlotte. It's just groceries. Don't make a scene." Charlotte felt her heart sink. "I'm not making a scene, dear. I just can't pay for this. I didn't plan for it." People behind them in line started shifting uncomfortably. A man sighed loudly. A woman with a child frowned. Jamie stopped scanning for a moment, sensing the tension. Nolan lowered his voice. "Mom, don't do this here," he said through clenched teeth. "Just pay it and we'll talk later." Charlotte felt her face grow warm. "Nolan, I'm sorry, but I can't. I have my own expenses this month. I already helped you last week." Zoe crossed her arms. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "We feed you, we give you a home, and you can't even help us once?" Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "You don't feed me. I pay for my share. And this isn't fair." Zoe's voice got louder. "Oh, please, you think everyone here wants to hear your drama? Just pay and stop embarrassing us." Charlotte looked around. People were staring. She felt smaller with every second. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, Nolan suddenly reached out and grabbed her purse right out of her hands. The sound of the strap snapping echoed louder than the noise of the store. Charlotte gasped. Her fingers still tingled from where the purse had been. Nolan's face was red, his jaw tight. "Just stop it, Mom," he said angrily. "You're making it worse." Charlotte couldn't believe it. Her own son, her kind, sweet boy who used to hold her hand when crossing the street, had just taken her purse like she was a child. Jamie froze. The woman with the child quickly turned her son's head away. The line went silent except for the faint beeping of the scanner. Charlotte stood completely still. For a moment, she felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. Then she spoke quietly, her voice shaking but clear. "If this is how you treat me for saying no, then maybe I've raised you wrong. Nolan's eyes flickered with something, shame maybe, but it was too late. Zoe just rolled her eyes and whispered, "Let's get this over with." Charlotte turned away slowly. She didn't argue or shout. She simply took a step back and said softly, "You can keep the groceries, but you've lost something much more important." She looked at her son one last time before walking toward the door. Her heart ached, but her back stayed straight. The crowd stayed quiet, watching her leave. As she reached the exit, she felt the tears finally fall. But deep inside, something was changing. She didn't know it yet, but this moment, this silence, was only the beginning. Charlotte stood near the entrance of the supermarket, her heart pounding. She could still hear the voices behind her, the sound of Zoe's anger echoing through the aisles. For a moment, she thought about leaving. She wanted to go home, close her door, and cry where no one could see her. But something made her stop. It wasn't pride. It was the deep, painful disbelief that her son had done this to her. She turned her head slightly and saw Nolan still at the counter. He was arguing quietly with Zoe, who looked furious. The cashier, Jamie Park, stood frozen, unsure whether to finish the payment or call someone for help. The people in line had stopped pretending not to watch. A few were whispering. Charlotte could feel every eye on her. Her cheeks burned, but her heart hurt more than her pride ever could. Zoe's voice suddenly rose again. "What are you waiting for, Nolan? Just use her card and get it done." Charlotte flinched. She saw Nolan hesitate for a second, holding her purse in his hands. "Zoe, maybe we should just..." Zoe cut him off sharply. "Maybe we should what? Let her walk away after embarrassing us in front of everyone." She laughed bitterly. "Old lady thinks she's better than us now?" Charlotte froze. "Old lady." The words hit like a slap. Jamie's face turned red with discomfort. Erin, the woman with the little boy, stepped closer to her son and whispered softly, "Don't look, Jack." Charlotte wanted to speak, but no words came out. Her throat felt tight. She looked at Nolan, hoping, just hoping, he would say something, anything to stop this. But he didn't. Zoe kept going, her voice sharp and cruel. "You live under our roof, you eat our food, and you can't even help once? You're selfish, Charlotte. Completely selfish." Charlotte felt her heart break into small, invisible pieces. She had never seen so much hate in her daughter-in-law's eyes. And what hurt the most was that Nolan just stood there, silent. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone," Charlotte whispered, finally finding her voice. "I just didn't want to pay for things that aren't mine." Zoe rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "Oh, please stop playing innocent. You've been living off us for months. You should be grateful." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled. "Grateful," she said softly. "I paid the house bills last month. I paid for Nolan's car repair. I cook every day. What more do you want from me?" The moment those words left her mouth, the store went quiet again. People shifted awkwardly. Even Jamie looked up, her hands still on the counter. But Zoe didn't stop. She raised her voice higher, almost shouting now, wanting everyone to hear. "Don't act like a saint. You think you're some kind of victim? You're lucky we even let you live with us. Now stop pretending and pay up, or we'll kick you out of the house." Charlotte froze. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Even Nolan looked shocked for a second, but he didn't correct her. He didn't tell Zoe to stop. He just rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Zoe, enough." But it wasn't enough. It was too late. Charlotte stared at her son. Her vision blurred as tears welled up. "You let her talk to me like that? Your mother?" she whispered. Nolan didn't look at her. His silence was louder than Zoe's shouting. Charlotte took a deep breath. Something inside her broke, but something else also woke up. A quiet strength she didn't know she still had. Without a word, she stepped closer to Nolan. Her eyes, still wet, met his. "You have no idea what you've just done," she said softly. She reached out and held her hand toward him, not to take the purse back, but as if to remind him who she was. The mother who raised him, who sacrificed everything for him. But Nolan didn't move. Charlotte's hand dropped slowly to her side. For a moment, no one spoke. The cashier glanced toward the manager's desk, unsure if she should call for help. Erin held Jack's hand tightly, whispering something to distract him. Charlotte finally turned away. Her voice was calm but empty. "You can keep the groceries, Nolan. You can keep the house too. But from today, you've lost something you'll never buy back." Zoe rolled her eyes again and muttered, "Finally, she's leaving." Charlotte didn't respond. She started walking toward the door, her footsteps slow but steady. Each step felt heavier than the last. She could still hear Zoe talking behind her, but the words had started to fade. When Charlotte reached the door, she stopped for a moment. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, older than she remembered. But beneath that sadness, there was something new in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It was quiet resolve. She turned her head slightly, one last time, and saw Nolan staring at her. For a brief second, he looked like a lost boy again, the one she used to hold when he was scared of thunder. But then Zoe tugged at his arm, and he turned away. Charlotte exhaled slowly and whispered to herself, "You can't love people who forget how to respect you." Then she pushed open the door and stepped outside into the cold evening air. The sky was gray, the wind sharp. But for the first time in a long time, Charlotte didn't feel weak. She felt something different, something stronger. Inside, the store buzzed again. People started talking quietly, pretending nothing had happened. But the silence that followed her exit said everything. And though Charlotte didn't know it yet, what she did next would make every single person in that store remember her name. The cold air outside the supermarket brushed against Charlotte's face, but she didn't move. She stood near the entrance, holding her empty shopping bag, her mind spinning. Her heart was breaking, yet something inside her felt steady. She could still hear the faint sound of Zoe's voice inside, sharp and impatient, demanding that Nolan hurry up. Charlotte closed her eyes. She wanted to cry, but not out here, not where strangers could see her pain. She had spent her whole life teaching herself to be calm, to keep her dignity no matter how hard life became. But then she remembered what had just happened, how her own son had grabbed her purse like she was nothing. The memory stung deeper than any wound. She turned around and looked back through the glass doors. She could see Nolan and Zoe still at the counter. The cashier, Jamie Park, looked nervous, glancing between them and the screen. The manager's desk wasn't far from the counter. Charlotte noticed a woman in a navy vest with a name tag that read Olivia Grant. She was talking to another employee, unaware of what had just unfolded. Charlotte took a deep breath. Something inside her whispered, "Enough is enough." She walked back into the store. Her footsteps were slow, steady, and quiet. But to her, they sounded loud, like they carried years of swallowed pain. When she reached the customer service area, she said softly, "Excuse me, are you the manager?" Manager Olivia looked up and smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" Charlotte's voice didn't shake. "Someone took my purse. I want to report it." Olivia blinked, surprised. "Oh, do you know who it was?" Charlotte nodded once. "Yes," she said. "My son." For a second, Olivia didn't know how to respond. The calmness in Charlotte's tone made the words even heavier. I see," she said gently. "Could you come with me, please?" They walked together toward the counter. Everyone nearby turned their heads. Zoe's chatter stopped mid-sentence when she saw Charlotte and the manager approaching. Nolan's face drained of color. Olivia's voice was firm but polite. "Sir, we've had a report of a stolen purse. Could you please return it to your mother?" Nolan froze. "It's not, I wasn't stealing. She's making this a big deal." Charlotte stayed quiet. She didn't raise her voice or argue. She just looked at him, her eyes tired, her expression calm. Olivia gestured toward the cameras above the counter. "We have security footage. I'll review it if needed." Jamie, the cashier, spoke softly. "Ma'am, I saw it happen." He did grab it from her hands. Zoe glared at Jamie. "You don't have to get involved." Jamie flinched but said nothing more. Olivia nodded once and turned to a nearby employee. "Marcus, can you please check the footage?" A tall man in a security uniform, Marcus Boyd, walked over and started speaking quietly into his earpiece. A minute later, another guard, Tyler Chin, joined him. They watched the screen near the back desk. Within moments, Marcus nodded and came back. "Confirmed, ma'am. The footage shows the gentleman taking the purse." The crowd around the counter had grown. People whispered. A few took out their phones, pretending not to record. Zoe looked furious, Nolan ashamed. "Sir," Marcus said firmly but calmly, "please hand over the purse." Nolan looked down at the purse in his hands. His fingers tightened around it. His voice came out small. "I wasn't stealing. She wasn't listening." Olivia crossed her arms. "Then you should have spoken, not grabbed. Please return it now." For a few long seconds, no one breathed. Then slowly, Nolan handed the purse back to Marcus. Marcus checked it, then gave it to Charlotte. "Here you go, ma'am." Charlotte took it quietly. Her hands trembled a little, but her eyes didn't. She looked at her son, standing there in front of everyone, his head lowered. Her voice was soft but filled with meaning. "You can replace groceries, Nolan," she said. But once respect is gone, it doesn't come back. Her words didn't sound angry. They sounded tired, like truth spoken after a long silence. Nolan said nothing. Zoe opened her mouth, but stopped when Olivia gave her a warning look. Charlotte turned to the cashier and smiled weakly. "I'd like to pay for my things now, please." Jamie nodded quickly and scanned the small loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a box of tea. The total was only a few dollars. Charlotte placed a few bills on the counter and picked up her small bag. As she did, a soft murmur spread through the store. People weren't laughing or judging anymore. They were quiet. Some even looked moved. Erin, the woman with the little boy, gave Charlotte a small nod of respect. Charlotte turned to Olivia. "Thank you for helping me." Olivia smiled gently. "You did the right thing, ma'am." Charlotte nodded and turned back toward Nolan and Zoe. They both looked small now, faces pale, eyes down, pretending to rearrange the groceries. Without another word, Charlotte walked past them. The crowd parted for her. The doors opened automatically, and she stepped out into the cold air again. But this time she didn't cry. She walked slowly toward the bus stop, her purse clutched tightly against her chest. The wind brushed her hair across her face, and she didn't bother to fix it. Inside the supermarket, the silence stayed long after she left. Even Olivia, who had handled many conflicts in her career, stood still for a moment, watching the door close behind Charlotte. That night, people who had seen what happened would tell their families about it. Some would say it was heartbreaking. Others would call it brave. But everyone would remember the quiet woman who refused to be humiliated and walked away with her dignity intact. Charlotte sat on the bus with her small grocery bag resting on her lap. The city lights outside the window looked blurry through her tears. She didn't cry loudly. She just let the tears fall quietly, like a soft rain no one could hear. She thought about the moment Nolan handed back her purse. The look in his eyes, shame, confusion, pride, had broken her heart all over again. That was her boy, her only child. The same boy she once stayed up nights for when he had a fever, the boy who used to draw her little cards saying, "I love you, Mom." Now, that same son had humiliated her in front of strangers. When the bus stopped near her street, Charlotte wiped her eyes, stood up, and walked slowly home. Every step felt heavier than the one before. By the time she reached her house, she wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Inside, the silence hit her harder than anything. She placed the bread and milk on the kitchen counter and looked around. The house felt smaller, colder. On the table sat a half-empty cup of Zoe's coffee, lipstick still on the rim. On the couch, Nolan's jacket was thrown carelessly, like always. Charlotte looked at it for a long time. Then she quietly walked to her room and sat on her bed. She whispered to herself, "It's time." She opened her drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the lease document for a tiny apartment she had secretly rented 2 months ago. She hadn't planned to move yet, but she had felt it coming. The distance, the disrespect, the way Zoe's voice had grown sharper and Nolan's silence longer. That night, while the house slept, Charlotte packed her few things. Some clothes, her photo albums, and her tea set. She looked around one last time before turning off the lights. There was no anger in her eyes, only peace. By morning, she was gone. When Nolan and Zoe woke up, the house was quiet. Too quiet. "Where's she gone?" Zoe said, yawning. Nolan looked around, confused. She probably went for a walk. But when he walked into her room, his heart sank. The bed was neatly made. The wardrobe was half empty. On the pillow was an envelope with his name on it. He picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Inside was a short note, written in his mother's neat handwriting. "Nolan, you took my purse, but what you really took was my heart. I've decided to leave so you can have the peace you think I take away. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean return. Please don't look for me. Mom." Nolan sat on the bed for a long time, holding that note. The room felt colder, emptier. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to beg her to come back, but she was already gone. Zoe walked in, annoyed at first, but when she saw the letter, her face went pale. "She actually left?" she whispered. Nolan looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You told her to. You said we'd kick her out." Zoe frowned. "I didn't mean it like that." But Nolan wasn't listening anymore. He sat there, holding the note, realizing for the first time that his mother had never needed him. He had needed her. Days passed. Then a week. People started whispering about what happened at the supermarket. Someone had recorded the whole thing on their phone and posted it online. The video spread fast. Son grabs mother's purse and humiliates her at supermarket. the title read. The comments poured in, thousands of them. That poor woman. How could her own son do that? She's stronger than all of them combined. Zoe couldn't face going out. Her friends sent her the video, asking if it was really her. She stopped answering messages. Nolan deleted all his social media accounts. Every time he saw a mother and her child at a bus stop, he felt a lump in his throat. He tried calling Charlotte, but her number had changed. He tried visiting her favorite places, but no one had seen her. Weeks later, he finally received a small envelope in the mail. No return address, just his name written neatly. Inside was a folded card and a photo. The card read, "Nolan, I'm doing well. I live near the old church now. I have peace. Don't let shame turn into anger. Let it turn into change. Mom." The photo showed Charlotte sitting by a window in a small apartment, smiling with a cup of tea beside her. She looked older but calm, happier than he'd seen her in years. Nolan stared at the photo for a long time, tears falling silently. He whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." Months later, Nolan visited the same supermarket again. It looked exactly the same, but it felt different. The moment he stepped inside, he remembered everything, the shouting, the eyes, the silence. He bought a small bouquet of white lilies and paid for them quietly. Then he walked to the counter where it had all happened. Jamie, the same cashier, recognized him. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at him carefully. Nolan managed a small smile. "I came to say sorry for that day." Jamie nodded slowly. "I remember your mom," she said softly. "She was kind. Strong." Nolan's eyes filled with tears again. "Yeah," he whispered. "She still is." He left the flowers on the counter and walked out. Outside, the evening sun was setting. The air smelled of rain, and the city lights began to flicker on. For the first time in a long time, Nolan took a deep breath and felt the weight of his choices. He didn't know if his mother would ever come back into his life. But he knew one thing for sure. He would never forget that moment, that silence, or the strength in her eyes when she walked away. It was the day he learned that love without respect isn't love at all. And it was a lesson he would never forget.